So this is the handover for the Auto Sleepers Stanton. We'll begin on the outside of the vehicle and we'll start round on the driver's side. Located behind the driver's door, you've got the access port for the gas refill. So just turn the cap slightly. Various pump systems engage onto two little splines which are just located either side of the main tube, and there's usually a screw fitting, and then when you squeeze the pump it'll allow gas to go into the system. The gas level indicator is located next to the driver's side of the vehicle. We'll show you that later on when we go through the cab. Further back you've got your standard access for the fresh water. So you've got an onboard fresh water tank, hose pipe straight in, and it will fill. There's an overflow on top of the tank when it's full. Alternatively, you can follow the gauge inside the van. Alternatively, you've got the choice of using either an aqua source or an aqua pump. Aqua pump, submersible that will connect up and you can draw from a water supply. The aqua source is a flat cassette hose that has a clip fitting onto there, and again it will fill up into the same fresh water tank. Above that, the exhaust for the heating system, so it's being used on gas. You'll see a condensation plume coming out of there. There is an aerial fitted onto the roof and also your satellite dish. However, if you require it, there is also an external aerial port as well. Some caravan sites, if reception is very, very limited or poor, will offer you that as an alternative connection. Mains hookup, it's important that you connect to the side of the van first of all. So when you're disconnecting, push down on a little blue spine so that you lift the cap, lift that away. When you reconnect, open the cap to 90 degrees, slide it in nice and firmly, and then follow the cable and connect then to your sight post or your power supply that you're going to be using. Toilet system is split into two. You have a separate reservoir for the flush water at the top. So a mixture of fresh and typically a pink solution to work as an antibacterial rinse. When you see water collecting into the trough here at the top, that's that reservoir full. It's about 7 litres in capacity. When you open up the cassette below, you'll see the cassette which you draw out. If you want to drain the reservoir down, there is a small tube just there. All right. What I would recommend if you're draining the top reservoir down is actually pump as much as possible into the cassette, and then when the cassette starts to, or when the pump starts to hunt a little bit, stop, remove this bung, hold the cap from this underneath, and that will just capture the last residuals. It's important that you drain these vans down in winter, especially on those reservoirs, to stop them from freezing. The cassette itself, having made sure that the slider's shut inside, you should be able to lift on the base yellow lever and then slide the whole system all the way out. On a campsite, you have collection points for these to go into, so you take the yellow cap off completely, empty it up over the sluice, press this yellow button in at the top, and that then allows the waste to come out of the bottom. Before you load it back in, use the measuring cup provided. Up here, we would recommend that you use a green chemical, so a capful of green mixed with about 2 litres of water to give you a digestion process to start with, and then slide it back in, and it should lock back into position ready for use. Just below the skirt, there's a blue and a grey tap just down here. Grey is your grey waste from your shower tray, from your vanity unit, from your kitchen sink. Drive over a drain or a gully or attach a small hose if needs be so that you can drain those off. The blue is the freshwater one for draining down the main onboard freshwater tank, which is you would do for sterilisation or for winter storage. On the back of the vehicle, you've got your bike rack. So extend the arms up out of the way so that you can fold the deck down. With your bike hubs, strap them through, so push the red tab in, secure, pull down so it's nice and tight. They'll slide backwards and forwards depending on the size of bike that you're wanting to use. And it's a similar story with the crossbars as well. Again, these can be swiveled around to go onto seat posts or crossbars, and again release so that you can go through and then pull tighten accordingly. Fold it up out of the way when you're not going to use it. So on this side of the van, you've got the ventilation for the fridge so that the fridge can breathe. Avoid having the caravan door open for long periods, especially if you're running the fridge on gas, because it needs to breathe through that as well. Two little covers down here. If you've got the awning out or not, you've got the option of an external mains power point coming out. So if you connect it to the mains on the other side, you can run mains into the awning. Cautionary note on this one, this is an external gas barbecue point. Do not barbecue under your awning. You can get a little fitting which goes into the top here, turn this one on, and you can use a gas barbecue. So the coupling can go up into here, push in nice and firmly, and then that connects the gas supply to your appliance. To disconnect, make sure that this red cap's turned off first of all, pull up on the brass fitting, and you should be able to disengage the tube accordingly. Two external lockers, one going in underneath the bed box. Previous owners left in mains cables, silver screens, various other bits and bobs. You've got your white, your water pumps in here as well for the external use pumps if you want to use that. And then below, using the smaller key, you've got this little side skirt pod locker. And into there, he's left his another warning triangle and a couple of leveling wedges for camping. When you're wanting to fill the vehicle up with fuel, you will have to open the passenger door, and then there's a suicide flap that goes the other way. Just unscrew and then fill up with fuel accordingly. Screw your cap back in and lock it back into position. Vehicle toolkit, using a small key or a screwdriver. If you unscrew that one, pops up on a spring, and you'll find your wheel jacks into there. One of the vehicle fuse boxes is just on the left hand side, and then you've got this black lever which you pull backwards for your bonnet release. Into the passenger door, and you've got another warning triangle and also a torch as well. Also underneath the passenger seat, you have got the access points for the vehicle battery, although there are alternative points for jump starting, which are under the bonnet. So we go under the bonnet of our Mercedes. There's a lever in the centre, which you need to pull across. And it's got its own self-supporting stay on the left-hand side. Brake fluid and radiator fluid are there over on this side. We've got the screen wash over on the right hand side. If you ever need to jump start the vehicle, because the position of the engine battery, you push in on this one to expose this section here, and then you can connect the positive. The negative, I would always recommend, goes onto either this brass spline up here, but I have found, if you're prepared to persevere, that if you can get it onto the engine lift bracket at the back, you do get a slightly more positive connection. So the oil filler cap is located on the right hand side of the engine, and just ahead of it you've got your oil dipstick, just there. Fitted to your van, you've got a fuel awning, so put the T up into the slot, extend the handle and twist. Bring the awning out to a midpoint where you can reach the legs, which are stowed up inside the pelmet. This is about 2/3 of the way out. Because of the superstructure that's around us, we can't fully extend it. These feet are spring-loaded, so push in slightly, let the leg fold through, let it slide down through your fingertips, down to the ground, and then push the bracket back to that position there. Repeat the same process on the opposite side. So push in, let it drop through, down to the floor, and then back up to support it. These are sunshades. In wet or windy conditions, they need to be put away. It's the reverse. For putting it away, the fold bracket back in. Make sure that the foot is against the pelmet when it locks back in, not the other way around. Like So there is a C channel in the front of these as well. So if you wanted to use extensions or wanted to fit a driveway awning, then you could attach a tail dart strip onto those for that purpose. Wind the awning back in. Should hear a click as it goes back on, and then it's a little bit of a fiddle, but you're aiming to turn the shaft through about 90 degrees so that you can pop the handle back out and stow just inside the caravan door. Above the fire extinguisher on the left hand side, you've got your electric step, so it will retract and can be extended for use. When you come into the motorhome, underneath the bed section, you have one of two control panels. I always start with this one because it's critical to the general operation of the van. There's a bank of switches along the top left hand side. The system shutdown button, if it's been selected, will isolate and turn off the entire 12-volt supply inside the vehicle. It also shuts down the action for the step retraction, and it also prevents you from charging the leisure battery when the vehicle is in motion. Whenever you come to use the 12-volt system, you'll need to turn it on. When you turn it on, it's usually accompanied with a couple of little bleeps. There's one of two on switches on this panel, so you can turn it on from there, and then you've got isolating switches for the water pump, for the interior lights, and you can change over from either leisure or vehicle battery for use. This is duplicated on another control panel elsewhere in the motorhome. When it comes to connecting to the main supply, I'd always recommend that you start with all of the switches in the down in the off position. So I showed you on the outside, connect the external supply on the van first of all, and then connect to your sight post. Lift up, do a circuit breaker test to make sure that the main supply is safe by pressing in the yellow switch. It should trip out instantaneously, and then you can come across then and turn on the remaining RCD switches. The four coloured lights across the top, you've got one for the water heater and one for the space heater. These will need to be on if you want to use the 240 volt connections for the heating systems on those appliances. All the time that you're connected to the main supply, then there is a battery charger which will trickle charge your leisure battery. If you switch it off, it won't. Some continental sites, if you go to, they have something called reverse polarity. You might get an indication light coming on there. Follow the instructions if that occurs. Other than that, that's your mains supply. And then just a bank of 12-volt fuses on this side for the interior operation of the van. Things like water pumps, igniters, they are in the handbook. There is a second fuse board located at the front of the bed box. I colloquially refer to those as the bridge fuses. So they're the fuses which link the cab battery to the leisure battery, fridge, for example. Also underneath the bed box, you have got your water heater drain valve. So we've already shown you that you've got to drain the fresh water and the grey water tanks off on the outside. The tank on this one has a thermostatic drain valve. So in the picture you can see that there's a blue tap which is running the same direction as the bed frame. If the air temperature in here goes below 2 degrees centigrade, as a defense mechanism to the water heater, this tap automatically turns through 90 degrees and it will now start to discharge the content of the water heater out underneath the van. To reset it, you've got to turn it back through that position, and then near the base where my finger is now, you've got a reset switch which has to go back in. You'll need to reprime the water heater if you have drained it out or if it's accidentally drained itself out. On the side of the control box underneath the seat, you've got two other pieces of equipment. If you're out in cold weather, there is a tank heater function for protecting the exposed tanks that are underneath the vehicle. Turns on a heat pad or turns on an element to stop those tanks from freezing up. And then attached onto the back of that box, and it will get warm sometime, that's quite normal, is your actual battery charger itself. So the control panel that's just inside the caravan door partially duplicates the one which is under the bed. So you have a standard on-off switch for turning on the 12-volt supply. Water pump switch, use the water pump on demand. If you're going out for the day, if you're sleeping in the van at night, please leave the water pump switched off. And then you have one for the upper light circuits. One for the awning light on the outside of the van. That will also come on when the vehicle is being locked as well. And then one for the ceiling lights that are up into the roof. Default, you use your leisure battery, but if you highlight on this one, you can change over the priority and you can use the vehicle battery instead. You have this one, which is for your tank heaters as well. Your arrows up on this side will take you through different functions to show you vehicle, leisure battery, freshwater and grey water levels. You've got a front screen for the auto sleepers as well as a time clock, which you can set up with an alarm. There is a solar panel fitted up onto the roof, so you'll get a solar panel indication on there as well. And then back to your standardized level ones. On the side of the wardrobe, you've got your Truma heating controls. So the Truma system is going to be heating up both your water and your room. You can set up a clock if you want to use it in conjunction with a timer as well. Initially turn the display on and you'll see these 4 characters appear, and just use the rolling wheel to select between those 3 characters. First character that comes up is your room temperature. Select on that one, press in on the button, you'll see the word off appear, and then from there you can turn up the interior room thermostat to your desired output, a maximum of 30 degrees centigrade. When you choose that as a heating option, you'll see other symbols appear on this top row. The one on the top left hand side, the flame symbol, indicates that the heating system is on. If it starts to flash, as it's doing so now, then it indicates that the temperature is trying to get up to your setting. Once that flame symbol becomes a solid symbol, like these other 2 characters that are here, then it's an indication that it's reached that output. To turn it down or turn it off, highlight on that symbol again, and then wind the wheel down. And if you don't want to use the heating system at all, take it all the way down to the off. For the water system, you go on to the next symbol and again press on that one. You have a choice of a 40 or a 60 degree position. Press in and select, and again if this symbol on the top row starts to flash, then it's trying to achieve that setting. If it's already gotten up to 40 degrees or 60 degrees, then that symbol will become solid. You will need, if you've drained the water heater out, to prime it. We'll show you that later on when we go to the kitchen taps. In terms of energy source, you have a choice. At the moment, we've got it set up onto gas. So you'd use that if you're wild camping, for example, to give you water heating or room heating. If you are plugged in onto mains electric, you've got the choice of either electric 1 or electric 2. These are a 900 and an 1800 watt electric element, so roughly about 3.5 and 7 amps respectively. Subject to the amount of amperage that's available for you to use, you could use those settings. Select onto them, you'll see the 2 main symbols replace then the gas. Certain locations, or if it's exceptionally cold, you might want to use a combination of both gas and electric. Example where you might use the mix 1 is if you're on a weaker mains hookup, for example, and you're wanting to get reasonable supply of electric or gas use from your heating system. You can combine the 2. It would stop you from overloading the electrical circuit, and it would still deliver your water temperature, your room temperature up to your desired setting. In extremely cold conditions, subject to the amount of amperage that's available to you, you can use a combination of both electric symbols and also the gas. Doesn't make the water any hotter, doesn't make the vehicle any hotter, but it will accelerate the process, especially if it's exceptionally cold. You can adjust the fan if you are using the heating system so that it increases the heat circulation. But if you take the water heater off as well, and then just go to the fan symbol on its own, you can just use the fan as a standalone item. If it's a warmer day, for example, then you can have a window or a roof light open and it will just increase the air circulation around inside the van. If you set up the clock, then you've got the option of using a timer clock onto there also, and that will then enable you, for example, tomorrow morning you can set it up so that the heating system kicks in at 8 o'clock in the morning and then perhaps then goes off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that pretty much concludes your heating systems. So with the sink and the water system, I mentioned before about draining the water system down. When you reset up the water supply, you'll need to do a couple of things. First of all, turn the pump on the control panel. Your cold water supply, if all of your drain valves are shut, will come through almost instantaneously. When you're purging the hot water system, you'll need to turn it into the hot tap position, and you'll need to make sure that you've got a continuity of supply coming through. If there's any kind of spitting or surging, then the water tank is not filled properly. Repeat this process with the vanity unit and with the shower, even if you have no intention of using them. It ensures that you've gotten all the airlocks out of the supply. We heated this one up earlier, so you're now starting to see steam rise out of the sink, indicating that we've got to that temperature. Heating process on those tanks between about 40 and 60 minutes, depending on the start temperature within the system. On the gas supply, straightforward. There are some isolator taps which we'll show you later on for the individual appliances, but if you're wanting to use the gas, turn your igniter on and it should fire up quite quickly. Like so. It's worthwhile periodically testing the burners just to make sure that you've got that continuity of supply coming through. Like so. These have got a shut off on them, so if the lid is inadvertently brought down over the hob, it will cause this part of the appliance to shut off. On some of these models it also shuts off the grill and the oven as well, so don't be surprised if the grill doesn't work if the lid is down. There's an electric hot plate, so if you're plugged in onto mains, you've got the option of using that instead. And you'll see a red light indicated onto there. For the oven and grill, first of all, igniter in, gas valve in I should say, and then igniter on, and you should get a nice crisp blue flame from your burner. And then for the oven, there we go. Can take a little while to come through, but once they warm up, should burn nice and evenly. Fridge controls, you've got a three-way fridge on here. So to turn the fridge on, press and hold in for a couple of seconds and you'll see all of the characters briefly light up. You choose the settings that you want it to be on. So if you're a mains hookup, you choose the mains and you adjust the thermostat accordingly. The more of these characters that are illuminated, the colder the fridge will become. It's imperative that the van is as near level as possible to get the maximum or best efficiency on the fridge. If you're wild camping, then you choose your gas. Automatic ignition should light up straight away. If the blue light remains lit on the fridge, then it's up and running and you can use the fridge in that way. If it starts to flicker or flash, it might take 2 or 3 attempts sometimes if it's not been used for a while, and you'll be able to operate the fridge in that fashion instead. The battery function, that only comes into play when the engine is running. It's not a compressor fridge, it's an absorption refrigerator, so the fridge will have need to have been on mains or gas in the first instance in order for the fridge to get sufficiently cold. You start the vehicle up, you press the battery symbol there, and this will remain constant, and it will start then to maintain the temperature in your fridge for the duration of your journey. If it can't identify a source, so in this instance it can't identify that the engine's running because it's not, then it will bleep at you to tell you that there is a problem. Obviously, if you get this if that sequence that repeats itself on the gas or on the mains, then it could indicate a problem with the gas supply or the main supply coming into the appliance. We'll put it back onto the mains, and tomorrow when you come to collect the van, you should see it nice and cold in there. So you have a Thetford swivel bolt toilet. Manoeuvre into the desired position. To open the wastegate for use, you need to pull this grey lever forward, open up the main waste, and then when you push down on the blue button at the back, as long as you've got power there, you should get your rinse water going around the bowl like so, as much or as little as you feel that you need. Shut your slider over across like so. Avoid leaving any water sitting in the bottom of the bowl, because when you pull the cassette out, that water will descend into the storage area. And then you have an indicator light that will come on, indicating when the toilet needs to be emptied. Taps for the vanity unit, so you've got continuity of supply on those, and also for the shower as well. And then you've got the shower door vanity unit, which will fold over in conjunction with the shower door panel for use. Roof light in the bathroom. Pull down the fly screen, pushing on the brown tabs, and then you should be able to extend the roof light up accordingly. Make sure as part of your departure checks that everything is locked down secure. This is the one that gets forgotten about, and it can be easily blown off when you travel at speed. So for the television, you have your own remote control. Press the red button on the top left hand side. It does take a few seconds to warm up, but you'll see a blue light typically appear on towards the bottom of the set. It'll flash up with a Vision Plus. It's been pre-wired for the satellite connection, so that when you are in the right position, when you turn on the power on the GoPro, on the Road Pro unit, it will start to do the sequence and set itself up. It's looking around at line of sight, so eventually you'll end up with green light all the way through the sequence, indicating it's connected, and it should already be preset, so you just then change channels on your TV accordingly.
The First Minister to be installed. Now, we know in the past in Northern Ireland, whenever both those...
You will notice when you open the wardrobe door, the original manufacturer's MaxiView aerial is also there as well. It's not being connected to the TV. You need to put an additional fly lead in from the wall panel to the TV if you wanted to use it in that way. But it's telescopic, it's retracted at the moment for travel use. Also in the wardrobe, at the back, you've got individual isolator taps for the individual appliances. So one for the room heating system, one for the fridge, and one for the cooker. When they're in that horizontal position, they're on. You've got choice of 2 tables, 1 large dining table, and then a little L-shaped bracket coffee table as well. And some spare brackets for the bike rack. Central roof light is got a swing down handle on it. Rotate it around and you should find that it will quickly open up. As again, as part of your departure checks, make sure that it's fully retracted. When you wind it back down, keep winding until you feel resistant and not until it's closed. So it should get another half turn at least so that it can be stowed away. You've got blind on one side or a fly screen on the other if required. Clip one to the other accordingly. Control the return on the fly screen. Don't let them just snap back. On the side windows, make sure that the push buttons are in on each of the latches. The arms are on ratchets, so when you push out, you'll hear it click. Push that again, you'll hear it click for a second time, and there's a third position as well, fully opened, and then just push beyond to let the window come back in. And similar to the roof light, you've got blind and or a fly screen, depending on how much privacy or protection you want. Ceiling roof light above the kitchen is slightly different again. There's a little turnbuckle latch, and then it should just push straight up and it will lock into various positions accordingly. Again, make sure it's closed for takeoff, and then all the way back down and lock it into position. You can lock it in a partially ventilated position, giving you about a ½ inch gap, so maybe at night time you won't want to do that if it's a little bit humid. As I said already, make sure it's on the fully closed position, and again, blinds and a fly screen for your convenience. So located down on the right hand side of the steering wheel is your gas gauge. So this will tell you how much gas you've got on board. Those lights gradually diminish as you consume your gas supply. So we'll finish off in the cab of the vehicle. Ignition keys on this one, you'll need to make sure that your foot is on the brake clutch before you try and engage or switch off or remove the key, because it's an automatic. Turn the key into position and it should start up. Quite easy and straightforward. With your foot on brake clutch, you can pull it back into reverse and it will give you your reversing camera image as well. There we go, like so. There's a slight time delay on this. Something else that I'll forewarn you of is that when you start up the vehicle, it does have an auto retract on the step, but it is a slow one, so it may take a couple of seconds before it goes off. Also, because we've got the vehicle engaged in reverse at the moment, you'll hear that bleeping noise because it's detecting proximity on the reversing sensors, which are mounted into the back of the van. Otherwise, neutral and drive, and then set off down the road. Your lights and indicators and wiper controls are all on one stalk. So rotate the stalk for your wipers, varying speed. Pull back on the stalk, push in on the stalk for your screen wash. Pull back on the stalk if you want your main beam. And then for your light controls, you've got side lights and your dipped headlights onto there. If you pull out on the switch, it becomes your reversing light, and you have headlamp beam adjustment on the right hand side of that stalk. Down on the door, you've got your electric mirror and electric window controls. So again, select which mirror you want to adjust and then adjust accordingly, like so. The blind spot mirrors on these, you will need to adjust with your fingertips. Electric mirror controls on those. Separate blinds for the quarter light and the main window, and then push down and push up on the latches for the central ones. They'll join together. You'll need to reposition the reversing camera screen in order to get them to join permanently. There's a magnetic strip down there as well. The pushback will go round the stalk, but you'll still need to pull this forward so that it goes in fully. Make sure that these are locked back into position before you set off, otherwise they can spring out in transit. Radio and heating controls. Radio, you've got the Mercedes control system onto here, so you have a menu button which will take you through the various options and accesses for panels, and then touchscreen if you require for access for Bluetooth, for example, or for radio functions. Okay, and tune in accordingly. There's a radio CD player up at the top also as well. Ventilation controls. Speed of the fan is controlled, direction of the fan is controlled on the top for whether you want a combination of windscreen or feet vents or face vents. The speed of the fan is done on the buttons on the side of the thermostat wheel for your temperature control, and AC on or off, recirculate on or off onto there, like so. Hazard light switch into the center. ASR is a function whereby you can take off or turn off the traction control. If you were maybe driving on wet grass or in slippery conditions, by turning it off, it would then give you direct throttle to wheel control rather than an engine braking system. For the use of the swivel seat, you will need to make sure that your foot is on the brake and that the vehicle is in the park mode, and release the handbrake. You will not be able to swivel the seat otherwise. Take yourself out of the seat rather than trying to be in it. Release the latch and the seat should swivel around. You may need to use a combination of the D-bar underneath the seats to get that clearance. You've got height adjustment on these seats as well by using the lever on the side, and you can also adjust the swab height as well as the backrest position accordingly. And then just a conventional armrest down on one side, which is on a ratchet for your convenience. And it's the same story with the passenger seat as well. Make sure when you turn the seat back that it locks back into position. Should be a firm clunk, and then set it accordingly. Obviously the classic Stanton layout is to make it into a double bed, but to make it into a single, swivel the driver or passenger seat all the way around, partially pull out the bed frame and let the backrest drop down to fill the gap, and then you've quite quickly got your single seat layout. So a lot of auto sleepers coach builds come with corner study legs. These are not designed to lift the vehicle anyway, they merely offer stability. There's one on either side at the rear. Wind them down so they make contact with the ground. Certain softer surfaces you might want to put a pad or something underneath them, like so. Word of warning, they don't come with any alarm or warning light if they've been deployed. So you do need to make sure as part of your departure checks that they are well and truly stowed away. Don't try and lift the van because you can actually end up either damaging the leg. So that concludes the handover for your auto sleeper Stanton. On behalf of Highland Camper Vans, we're really proud that you bought this vehicle from us. I hope it's going to give you lots of smiles and lots of miles. Take care, all the best.